So we're live streaming and it's 3 p.m. in Australia. So hi, Mum. Happy birthday. That's truthful. It's her birthday today. I love you very much. And love, in fact, is what makes a city green. Love is behind the sharing economy. Love is behind the caring economy. And in fact, it's love that sits underneath the ability to transform the pressures that exist at the moment that make people overconsume. See, what really drives our overconsumption, what really drives the 4.1 global footprint hectares for Vancouver's average individual consumption? Often it's a void. It's an internal void that when we reconnect has the potential to transform in very powerful ways. Now, I come from a small town where I've been living for the last 7 years to the north of Sydney, which I'll tell you a little bit more about the way we've connected in the last few years there. But when I came over from Australia and went to then a small town in southern Oregon called Ashland, that's quite a connected community. And then I come to Vancouver, which I've heard so many wonderful things about, and I meet so many wonderful people. I assume then that that will translate into the green city that I had expected would be here. But in fact, if you look at a recent report by the Vancouver Foundation, you'll see that this is one of the most disconnected cities in the world in terms of human connection. It's mind-blowing how disconnected people are here. So few people talk to people that are in their proximity. So few people have confidence in their neighbours in terms of hope that they're living around people that actually give a damn. It's an incredible indictment, if you read that report, on what the reality is here in terms of connection. Yet, I love you people of Vancouver. Individually, I've met so many wonderful, wonderful people. There's just the ingredient missing there, which is that love that we need to bring back into the equation. And many of you here tonight will be very good at doing this, and many of you who are watching the live stream of this who are in Vancouver, I went to dinner with a couple of you last night. You're great at doing this. I know that there is the seed here, and there are things that are happening that translate into the sharing economy, the caring economy. We need to do more of it. We need to hug more. We need to talk more. We need to connect more. We need to love more. And we need to put on more potluck dinners. Although I hear you have a lot of them here already. The town that I came from in Australia, Brooklyn, and then the island I lived on for the subsequent year, Dangar Island, was an area in my country that really suffered from the neoliberal push towards economic rationalisation and individualisation and specialisation of labour. What happened was we had bakeries, we had butchers, we had local mechanics that all disappeared from the 1970s onwards. And in 2007 or 2008, when I first arrived there, I found a community that was commuting to the big smoke all the time. For work, for services, myself when my motor scooter broke down, because I hadn't been able to connect with people enough in this community in ways that would have allowed something different to eventuate, I had to go 60 miles in order to get my scooter fixed, what embarrassingly turned out to be a spark plug problem. And here I was living on a river community with all sorts of people that know particularly well boat mechanics and of course can easily spot a busted spark plug. So I decided to do something about it, and I pulled together what turned out to be 14 people, and we door knocked the whole community, 6 river communities, about 2,000 people. It took 2 years. We door knocked the community and we asked people, what are you interested in? What skills and knowledge do you have, and what resources would you like to share? And I made a deliberate point to do this face-to-face rather than through something in the letterbox or something online, which is very much the trend these days. I wanted to get the human connection. And so we created the Hawkesbury River Community Directory. 550 things that if you open any page, you'll see there's just the list of the items of things that people are willing to share. So here we are in the knowledge section. First aid courses, fixing cars and boats, food, cooking in a nutritional sense, food, ice cream making, gardening, weed identification, herbal therapies, Australian history, the list goes on. And people then put how willing they were to share that, casual, part-time, full-time, or in emergency. I put my singing in there under that category. And then people were able to list whether or not they wanted to charge, whether they wanted to barter, whether they wanted to gift it, or whether they wanted it to be negotiable. Now, I'm not quite sure because I left relatively soon after the wonderful launch. We had about 50 people show up for this wonderful launch where there was a whole lot of love and a whole lot of excitement about this. I'm not sure how well it's gone since then. People are seemingly more addicted in dispersed communities to having online platforms, and it was, as I said, a conscious decision to keep this in the practical and the physical, because I thought another website adds a whole lot of infrastructure when we're not sure about something, and it also means it's another login that people need to remember, and I wasn't convinced it was going to get up and running. Even if this hasn't resulted in a whole lot of trades, although I know, for example, the local homeless guy who lives in the caves up in our community has been working in various capacities fixing computers, including mine, as a result of what came out in this directory. He's actually got a background in electrical engineering and is brilliant with tinkering. And I know a number of people have engaged his services. Even if overall there hasn't been an increase in service exchange, which was the aim, what I have discovered is that it has sparked an interest and a reconnection in that community in terms of love and sharing and understanding we're in this together and we can do things together, building on the things that we're already doing. Absolutely. This connection is so important. Behavioural science is showing us more and more that when we give, we actually set off the parts of our brain in the same way as the ones that get set off when we make money. Giving, sharing, connecting. We're learning more and more about the heart every day and about how heart actually gives out vibrations and how we resonate with others when we get close. Sadly, in this city, it seems that everyone on the buses, in the public, supporting the public transport system, is stuck in their technologies. My auntie used to tell me of the buses and the trains in Australia, down in Melbourne, where the back carriage was the language carriage. And you'd get on the back and there'd be a new language being taught every day by a volunteer instructor. Wonderful stuff. You get to choose. You don't have to be in the back carriage. I've seen this sort of thing popping up around the world now, where people will teach courses on public transport and you get to choose which carriage you want to be in, the silent carriage or the skills carriage. Incredible things are happening in North America, including in Vancouver. And I would recommend to you Shareable's new policy primer on sustainable cities. They've documented, in consultation with the Sustainable Law Centre out of Berkeley with Janelle Orsi and her team, they've documented incredible things that are happening in the policy space, particularly in the US, where rezoning is happening to actually allow for small-scale production, and food laws are changing to actually allow people to sell produce to locals. You're getting all sorts of incredible things happening in small scales, but they're still disconnected, and they're still sitting, as Conrad was alluding to, on this basis of this economic growth, competitive approach that is missing the love. Competition, if we go back to that word and its Latin derivation of competeras, actually means to strive together. Together. We have had it drilled into us for so long through an economic oppression that we are alone on this journey. That is the biggest flaw we could make in thinking that we can address these problems, is to think that we do this alone. As Bill Kauth, Zoe Alawan, Charles Eisenstein say, we need each other, and we need to need each other. It's actually fundamental in this journey to have those pieces put together. And so I want to end with a little story. A friend of mine was visiting a remote part of Africa, and he went to a village that he'd heard there were some very interesting dynamics happening there. He went to this village and he saw that people wore pretty much the same clothing, differences by gender. People lived in similar kinds of housing in their huts. And he couldn't tell who the leader was in these communities. He noticed that they worked very effectively, but he couldn't see who the leader was, although there were two people who had these marks on their forehead and they had the same markings on their huts. Frustrated 3 days in, he asks his translator to ask what's going on. The translator comes back and says, because he had noticed that these people with their markings had been given a lot of deference, but they weren't the leaders. The translator came back and said, there is a rule in this community that when people get to a certain level of wealth, they throw a feast until they become the so-called poorest, and then they get a mark on their forehead and on their huts as a sign of respect. Anthropologists know this as the potlatch. And you, ladies and gentlemen, know this as the potluck. That was actually the foundation of your modern day experience, was an inbuilt wisdom to have a mechanism of redistribution, economic redistribution, built in to the process of society. The potlucks that you experience on some level are a representation of that has lost a lot of its essence perhaps, but is still meant to be bring what you can, perhaps with a little less of the redistribution. But the potluck is something where Vancouver shines when it comes to love. And what it is then a case of doing is reconnecting that love across multiple systems, at understanding what an economics of enough and economics of sufficiency in love would actually look like. Understanding that certain structures like not-for-profit enterprise, non-distributing cooperatives, community land trusts, community-supported agriculture are actually part of that human connection experience that understands the wisdom of redistribution. That we have all the tools we need at our disposal to actually create a truly green city, but that it must build on the love that is within all of our hearts and is just waiting to burst forward in human connection and then to explore the sustainability question as we move beyond.